Kunja Bihari. Vijana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Yasodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jamunnathirvanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jamunnathirvanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jamunnathirvanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Jamunnathirvanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Janda Vallabha Jaya Girivardhari Jaya Girivardhari Vallabha Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivardhari Jaya Girivardhari Jaya Yasodanandana Jaya Brajandaranjana Jaya Brajandaranjana Jaya Yasodanandana Jaya Brajandaranjana Jaya Brajandaranjana Jaya Jamunnathiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jamunnathiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gauda Bhaktivedanta. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopal Jaya Jaya. Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopal Jaya Jaya. Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jaya Jaya. Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jaya Jaya. Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopal Jaya Jaya. Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopal Jaya Jaya. Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jaya Jaya. Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jaya Jaya. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Gaura Haribo. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Gaura Haribo. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa, Paribrajagacharya Astotara Sadashi, Śrīmad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta, Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Śrīmad Bhāgavatam Grantharaj Ki Jai. Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 10, text number 15. Om Agyan Divananjasa Jananjana Salakaya Chakshuram Militanjana Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha. Sachapi. No, I'll do the whole thing. Sachapi Pandadevya Sindhu Sobhira Patis Tatvajikashayam Samyak. Perfect. Shadayadi Kutadikaras Tadidaya Ganti Mochinam Dijavacha. Asucha Bahu Yoga Granta Sammatam Taraya Varuha Sisrasa Padam. Mulham upasita samapayam vigatan ripadivasmaya uvacham. Sa, he Maharaj Rahugana, cha, also, api, indeed, Pandaveha, O best of the Pandu dynasty Maharaj Parikit, Sindhu Savirapati, the king of the states known as Sindhu and Savira, Tattvajigasayam, in the matter of inquiring about the absolute truth, Samyak Saddaya, by faith consisting of complete control of the senses and the mind. Adikricha adikaraha, who attain the proper qualification. Tat, that, hridaya granthi, the knot of false conceptions within the heart. Mochanam, which eradicates. Dvijavacha, the words of the Brahmana Jadbharat. Ashrucha, hearing. Bahu Yoga Grantha Sammatam, approved by all yogic processes and their scriptures. Tvaraya, very hastily. Avaruya, getting down from the palanquin. Siddhasa, by his head. Padamulam, at the lotus feet. Upasrita, falling down flat to offer obeisances. Shamapayan, obtaining pardon for his offence. Vigata nripa devashmaya, giving up the false pride of being the king and therefore being worshipable. Uvacha, said, Sukadeva Goswami said, O best of the Pandu dynasty, Maharaj Pariksit, the king of the Sindhu and Savira states, Maharaj Rahugana, had great faith in discussions of the absolute truth. Being thus qualified, he heard from Jadbharat that philosophical presentation which is approved by all scriptures on the mystic yoga processes and which slackens the knot in the heart. His material conception of himself as a king was thus destroyed. He immediately descended from his palanquin and fell flat on the ground with his head at the lotus feet of Jadbharat in such a way that he might be excused for his insulting words against the great Brahmanas. He then prayed as follows. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. In Bhagavad Gita 4.2, Lord Krishna says, Ivam parampara praptam imam rajasaya vidu sa kalinaha mahata yogo nashta parantapa. This supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. Through the disciplic succession, the royal order was on the same platform as great saintly persons, Rajarishis. Formerly they could understand the philosophy of life and knew how to train the citizens to come to the same standard. In other words, they knew how to deliver the citizens from the entanglement of birth and death. When Maharaj Dasarath ruled Ayodhya, the great sage Vishvamrita once came to him to take away Lord Ramchandra and Lakshman to the forest to kill a demon. When the saintly person Vishvamitra came to the court of Maharaj Dasarath, the king, in order to receive the saintly person, asked him, Ahishtam yatat punā janma jayaya. He asked the sage whether everything was going on well in his endeavour to conquer the repetition of birth and death. The whole process of Vedic civilization is based on this point. we must know how to conquer the repetition of birth and death. Maharaj Rahugana also knew the purpose of life, and therefore when Jad Bharat put the philosophy of life before him, he immediately appreciated it. This is the foundation of Vedic society. Learned scholars, brahmanas, saintly persons and sages who were fully aware of the Vedic purpose advised the royal order how to benefit the general masses, and by their cooperation, the general masses were benefited. Therefore, everything was successful. Maharaj Rahugana attained this perfection of understanding the value of human life. Therefore, he regretted his insulting words to Jad Bharat, and he immediately descended from his palanquin and fell down at the lotus feet of Jad Bharat in order to be excused and to hear from him further about the values of life, known as Brahma Jigasa, inquiry into the absolute truth. At the present moment, high government officials are ignorant of the values of life, and when saintly persons endeavour to broadcast the Vedic knowledge, the so-called executives do not offer their respectful obeisances, but try to obstruct the spiritual propaganda. Thus one can say that the former kingly government was like heaven, and that the present government is like hell. There's a message to the politicians, if you're listening in. Pretty hard hitting, really, isn't it? We're like we're in Australia. If you said that in other countries, they'd be dragging me out the door now, never to be seen again. So we have to thank our politicians here that we, they allow us to speak the truth without, objecting. Of course, in the beginning of Krishna consciousness, the government here did object. Because they didn't think that the Krishna consciousness movement was authoritative in the beginning. So we used to have pamphlets that we'd hand out, don't lump us in. I don't know if you've ever seen those. Because what happened in the beginning was that, we were just called the orange people along with other orange people. Okay, they wear orange, they're all the same, they're all orange people. And the orange people are crazy, mad people. They're into intoxication, orgies, so many crazy things, and they follow some crazy human and present him as God, and they all think they're God, and they're out of control. So the government used to see us just like that. And so they, originally they even in Australia, they didn't want us here because we lived here. There's not a lot they could do about it. We were all Aussies in those days. There was barely an Indian to be seen. But still, they just thought we'd gone mad. So, yeah.
Now we have war, fights and things like that. When kings ruled, also they had war. They had war then?
War?
Yeah, when kings
1970.
kings ruled the country?
Do they have war against who? Against the devotees?
No. When kings ruled the country, did they have fights? Like nowadays there is a lot of war, right?
Yeah, they still warred, yeah.
That time also they had war.
Yeah.
Why then when kings ruled?
Well, we'll come to that point. So, basically, I joined in 1978, so there was a definite mood around the world, in the Western world where Krishna consciousness was being established, and in Europe, that the governments were really opposed because they didn't understand Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada said something like that at one time, that, in the beginning, they will fear you, I think, and then hate you. And they'll gradually become inquisitive, and then they'll love you. Which is sort of exactly what happened. Something's different. Gee, that's a bit scary. That's not the normal thing I'm used to. What's going on here? And then it's a nuisance. This is, I don't want that. I hate this. It's not what I'm after. But then, because the Hare Krishna movement, there's something to it. Eventually, they're going to have to see. Well, there just seems to be something more. Why are our young boys and girls, flocking to this Hare Krishna movement all over the world? There must be something. And they don't seem to be taking drugs. And, all these other things which we thought is part of it, they're not. So, what is that? Prabhupada said, actually, one of the certifications of the authenticity of our movement came from a Christian priest who put out a pamphlet. These young boys and girls, they're our young boys and girls. They're supposed to be going to our churches. They had no interest, and now all of a sudden they're mad after God. So there must be something there that they're mad after God. They're not mad after drugs and things, So Prabhupada took that. Oh yes, thanks for the certification. Prabhupada always turned everything in favour. One time, a devotee, not a devotee, but Prabhupada was giving a talk, and guest put his hand up with a comment. You speak as if you know everything. Prabhupada said, thank you very much. So that you appreciate, you've seen something there, yeah. It's hard to get around that point, isn't it? You can ask Prabhupada a million questions and he'll have an answer, a good answer. They saw there's something to it, and so gradually they started to accept. Otherwise, they wanted to just block the Hare Krishnas. If you went out chanting, they wanted to give you a fine, and they, and then if you didn't stop from giving you fines, okay, then we'll put you in jail. And, I think a couple of times I was thrown in jail, and we weren't allowed to. We didn't have a congregation, really. Not, small congregation, half a dozen people. Not very many people, some. But, no, we had more than half a dozen. But a lot of the congregations sort of came and went. They weren't fixed up. 1 week your congregation would be there, and the next week there'd be a whole lot of different people. We've won a few of the previous lot. It was a whole different. So we had to, of course, go out and sell books and incense, but then they didn't want us doing that either. So they, actually I think the majority of the hawkers' laws, no hawkers allowed, and no doing this, I think they were created just for the Hare Krishna movement. And I remember I was in one town out the back of New South Wales, and of course in a country town, sometimes they call them rednecks. They're actually nice people, but they have their nickname. But they can be more intolerant than people in the city of something different to the usual country folk they see in town. So I remember one time I was distributing candles. They were like a lantern candle. We used to make them ourselves and sell them. Help fund our movement. We used to go door to door. And anything that moved, we tried to sell them one. So I was actually in a supermarket, and about 4 or 5 police came in and literally just picked me up, said, "You're under arrest," threw me in the back of the paddy wagon and took me to jail. I said, what have I done? Oh, you've been charged with obstructing pedestrians on the footpath. I'm thinking, but you caught me in the shop. It wasn't chanting or anything. They didn't just throw me in the lockup, they put me in the big jail with the common populace. I was with another devotee. His name was Nisringa. I thought he'd be fearless, but the name like that, he said, don't talk to anyone, whatever you do. He just sort of sat in the corner, you know. I sat there and people just kept coming up asking, and so, yeah, Hare Krishna, because we were dressed like Hare Krishnas. And the whole time I was in there, people just wanted to know about Krishna. I just sat there and told them all about it. They loved it. Anyway, but the thing is that they literally just, that's what they were like. That's an example what they would do, just pick you up off the street. Or, most devotees, some of the older devotees in the temple will tell you about, they're getting chased around the city, the men, the women running in one store, coming out the back there and, like that. They just didn't want us here. They just couldn't understand it. But gradually, they understood. It's authorised. And now, because I never ever, could possibly dream in my wildest dreams that, I'd be registered as a registered minister of religion, able to, and people would actually call, please do the wedding ceremony for our son or daughter. Couldn't imagine that. We just weren't, we were just considered crazy people. Therefore Prabhupada had to put out a pamphlet at one stage. Who's crazy? They were welcome. Yeah. So anyway, our government is very respectful of bona fide religions, and so we're very fortunate. We're very fortunate to have that situation. And of course they do, in recognition of that, they support all the activities we do, protect our rights, and also even financially give us donations, which we're very appreciative of. But, throughout the world that's not the case. There are many countries, where those religious freedoms. So we should take full advantage of that. Never take that. Devotees have been beaten, killed, abused, jailed, threatened, even here in Australia. So we can have that opportunity to, chant Hare Krishna and preach Krishna consciousness like that. I remember one time I was up in Sydney and there was a godbrother of mine, he was chanting his Gayatri. And he pulled out his Gayatri thread and he said, oh, it's not so important anyway, right? It's just the Gayatri mantra. I said to him, Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati the core, they wanted to kill him. And he was prepared to make that sacrifice of his life should it come. He went up against some, very big forces. They wanted to kill him. But he stood for our ability to chant the Gayatri mantra. He goes, well, if you put it like that. He took it more seriously. And of course, if we see that, these, of course in the days of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, the Kshatriyas who were meant to be fighting on behalf of Krishna weren't. Therefore, it's left to the Brahmanas to stand up and preach boldly without any Kshatriyas to protect them. In fact, the government is joining with the rogues and the dacoits who are trying to harass the devotees. So, so this here in this verse, we may ask, what is the importance of this movement? That devotees prepared to die, and good rulers will, protect such a movement in society, seeing it as essential for the benefit of society. What is the purpose of this movement? So it's explained here in this verse, and it's also explained in the Bhagavad-Gita, that so this, it says, Prabhupada quoted that verse, Bhagavad-Gita 4.2, that the supreme science of Bhagavad-Gita was taught to the kings, the rulers. So it gives you, in that verse, points you in the right direction how important this movement is. It's not just, something that's a poetic literature, meant to be, chanted in the cafe halls, and, it's not for armchair speculators to sit at home and have a red wine and, discuss, the meaning of life while they're watching Monty Python. It's not like that. It's meant for, it is so important that, like everything the government does, it actually has to be, disseminated throughout the society, just like the government takes education very important. All the departments of the government, they take equally important, even the criminal department. But the positive aspect, what should be done, what you'd like society to be like, how you'd like the citizens to progress, that should be, that of course is foremost. So it says here, formerly they could understand the philosophy of life and knew how to train the citizens to come to this same standard. In other words, they knew how to deliver the citizens from the entanglement of birth and death. Now, in this regard, so this is the main point of this is the teaching of Bhagavad Gita. In fact, Prabhupada points out of all the Vedas that he says, when Maharaj Dasarath ruled Ayodhya, the great sage Vishwamitra came to him to take away Lord Ramchandra and Lakshman to the forest to kill a demon. When the saintly person Vishwamitra came to the court of Maharaj Dasarath, the king, in order to receive the saintly person, asked him, Ahistam yattat punar janma jaya? He asked the sage whether everything was going on well in his endeavour to conquer the repetition of birth and death. The whole process of Vedic civilization is based on this point. We must know how to conquer the repetition of birth and death. So, Prabhupada quotes this often in his lectures. On this point, he'll quote the same example. So this example in this purport, Prabhupada often quoted this same example, because Maharaj Dasarath, of course, is a very famous king, being the father of Lord Ramchandra, so everyone knows and respects him. And therefore, his response, that here is a saintly person, a spiritual person, a sadhu, what's the main purpose that a sadhu comes to us, or the main opportunity we can get from them? What should the topics of our conversation be? So you don't ask them, have you seen some good sporting activities lately? You've been to any, did you know we just put on some good entertainment with some, dancers and singers? And no. Because, these days, if you go to work, if you go anywhere, you're going to train. As soon as you speak to anyone, basically, did you see that show on TV last night? If you listen, doesn't matter where you are. In the office, they go to the office. What'd you do last night? Oh yeah, watch that show, about that. It's all entertainment. And did you hear about, so and so breaking up in Hollywood? No. And the cricketer, he was out for a duck. No. Yeah, from the Indian side. So, but actually when a saintly person comes there, you know, their whole existence is how to solve the problem of birth and death. Now Prabhupada puts that in the Bhagavad-Gita, you know, presenting this same teaching. He explains that very nicely in the introduction of the Gita. I'll come back to this point. So, Prabhupada he says, just what is the Bhagavad-Gita? You know this part? Yeah. The purpose of the Bhagavad-Gita is to deliver mankind from the nescience of material existence. Every man is in difficulty in so many ways, as Arjuna was also was in difficulty in having to fight the battle of Kurukshetra. Arjuna surrendered to Sri Krishna, and consequently this Bhagavad-Gita was spoken. Not only Arjuna, but every one of us is full of anxieties because of this material existence. So we might say, oh, this, you know, you got your problems, I have my problems. But no, we all have the same problem. That he says, our very existence is in the atmosphere of non-existence. So we live in an environment where everything is being smashed out of existence constantly. That's the world we live in, that's the environment. Our body, we've got all these nice friends and relatives, gone, another one gone. And as Maharaj Yudhisthira said, you know, Maharaj Yudhisthira was asked, I forget who asked him, but what is the most amazing thing? Was it Yamaraj? Yeah. Amazing thing in this world. Yudhisthira Maharaj said, at every moment, everyone is dying. Everyone will die. But the amazing thing is everyone thinks it won't happen to me. Oh, he was so unfortunate. You know, did you hear so-and-so died? That's bad luck. It's like, you know, it never really happens. Right? It's just bad luck. Gee, you know, where'd that come from? Just out of the blue. You know, that's so unfortunate. But it will happen to every single one of us like that. So that's the very environment we live in. So every time we step out the door, even while we're sitting here now, you know, devotees have actually left their body sitting on the asana giving class. Hopefully I'll get through the end of this one. He says, our existence, now I'm scaring myself. We should be scared. Our existence is eternal, but somehow or other we are put into asat. Asat refers to that which does not exist. So he goes on to explain this point of, you know, Brahma Jigyasa, that out of so many human beings who are suffering, there are only a few who are actually inquiring about their position as to what they are, why they are put into this awkward position, and so on. Unless one is awakened to this position of questioning his suffering, unless he realises that he doesn't want suffering, but rather wants to make a solution to all suffering, then one is not considered a perfect human being. Humanity begins when this sort of inquiry is awakened in one's mind. in the Brahma Sutra, this inquiry is called Brahma Jigyasya, the tall Brahma Jigyasya, as we mentioned in this verse. So it comes down to that inquiry. Every activity the human being is to be considered a failure unless he inquires about the nature of the absolute truth. So if we don't find a solution to that problem, we can say that everything I do in this world will come to nothing. Imagine that. So at the end of the day, how was your day? Yep, everything I did came to nothing. Just another day in the material world. You sort of wonder why people get out of bed. But they're not thinking their day comes to nothing. They're thinking their day comes to something. Oh, there's some bank balance. There's a house, there's property, there's family, everything, fame, reputation, everything is, something is happening. But actually, the net result is that no matter how successful they are, they end up with zero, nothing. And there's no one who can stop that process. So, but no one thinks like that in that terms. Actually, when I was a child, I've mentioned this story before, when I was probably about 7 years old, I was washing the dishes for my mother. And my father came up and put some very sharp knives there, butcher's knives. He said, "Don't even touch yourself with that blade, it'll cut you immediately." He said, "You can kill yourself really easily with that knife, so be careful." He wanted me to wash them. And so I'm looking at these knives, thinking, and I started to think, what if I actually slip in the water while I'm got my father's knife and I fall over and stick myself in the guts and blood and I die? How little boys think, and mine just runs away. So I was just thinking like that. But then, perhaps something from a previous life, something else popped into my head above this sort of, playful sort of imagination. And I asked the question, what does it, after I die, what happens? Is everything finished and everything comes to nothing? Like that. I asked that question. It just popped into my head. So then I thought to myself, if everything comes to nothing, why live? In other words, and I was trying to think, why am I so scared to die now? That's what I was thinking. What does it matter? And so I started to go through, the whole thing in my head. I thought, all right, if I died now, I wouldn't get to go to school. I thought, I don't like going to school anyway. I only go there to play with my friends. Otherwise, it's boring. So I didn't get much of an education. And then I thought, I could get a job like my dad. And I start looking at his butcher's knives. I'm thinking, I'm not going to miss anything there. And I thought, I get a family, get married, some nice children. And I thought, but they'll all die. And then I'll die. And I've done a lot of work. So then I thought, so really, if I've died right now, I actually don't gain anything because everything will be gone anyway. There is nothing there's no value in going for it. It's all going to be taken away. Why do that? And I thought, well, there must be some reason to just live and not sort of just, otherwise people would kill themselves, And I thought, I just, in a very childish way, I just thought, well, maybe I could make people happy. I thought, that sounds good. Oh, I'll do that then. And so, but people don't think like that. in the course of their 100 years, if they live to 100 years, that they don't generally think like that. Generally they don't. Even when they, sometimes, they say renunciation at the crematorium. Right? So people, you see them, they go to the crematorium, sometimes they'll come up to you, oh yes, I'm coming to the temple every day from now on. When I see this, just gone, everything gone, it's all gone, tears are flowing, and this is a grown man, I'm not talking, tears are flowing. I'm going to take everything more serious because that's the last you ever see him. You don't see him, So it's called renunciation at a crematorium. But one should take it seriously, more seriously than that. Not that just 5 minutes and then it's gone. One should take it seriously. And so Bhagavad Gita, the whole Bhagavad Gita, its purpose is actually to stop this repetition of birth and death and stop being in the atmosphere of non-existence, where everything is actually zero from beginning to end. It's only an illusory. So the first concept that, of what has no meaning is that, therefore, as King Rahugana felt, my importance as a king really has no value, because it will all just disappear and it'll all just come to nothing like that. If I do have an existence apart from this temporary body, what is that? Who am I? What am I? And how do I attain that eternal status? So that's what Prabhupada calls in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 14th chapter. You see this verse that one who engages in is that the one? No. The one that one comes to the level of Brahman, and then by coming to the level of the Brahman, one is able to then come to devotional service. That's 18. Is that 18? 18th chapter? I thought it was 14. Yep. So one who is thus transcendently situated, so people who working in cooperation with the rulers, who have been advised how to organize the whole of society, so everyone in society is practicing the teachings, which the essence is there in the Gita, the teachings of the Vedas of how to gradually offer all of their work to the Supreme. They may not know what the Supreme is, but the fact that the government, the leaders, engage everyone in that process, and it's there through the educational system, that everything I do is for the benefit of the Supreme. The king is working for the benefit of the Supreme. We're all working as a coordinated effort for the Supreme. Now, people may have no conception of the Supreme, they may not even have any faith in the Supreme, but they still go along with it anyway because the whole society is going along with it. That brings you to the point of self-realization, that very process, because gradually it dawns you, oh, I'm doing everything, everyone is doing everything for the Supreme, we're all part of the Supreme. If I'm part of the Supreme, I have the same qualities as the Supreme, therefore I'm the eternal servant of the Supreme. Gradually it comes to this, Brahman conception, I am not the body. And so it says, one who is thus transcendently situated once realizes the Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful, he never laments or desires to have anything, he is equally disposed to every living entity. In that state he attains pure devotional service to me. So Rahugana, he come to that, what Prabhupada calls the Brahman conception. So, when I used to read that verse, I used to think, how is it that one comes to this Brahma Bhuta? It's like a really advanced stage of complete detachment from the body. But Brahma Bhuta begins just with the Brahma Bhuta conception. that I am not this body, I am something permanent, but I know I'm not this body, but there's something more permanent. I don't know. That's Brahma Buddha conception. From that point, as Maharaj Rahugana did, then they start, here's these Hare Krishna devotees, the ones that have not been thrown in jail. Let us listen to them. They seem to have something. They're always happy. They call them the happy people. Prabhupada said, previously you were hippies, now you're happies. How is it that they're always happy? I sometimes, when doing the beginning of education, I say to the parents, or the child, depends who's listening, how will you know when you've learnt everything you need to know? Or you'll have lots of money, or you'll get a good... I say, you'll always be happy. When you've learnt everything that you need to know, you'll always be happy. That's a Brahma Buddha conception. And people are looking at the Hare Krishnas, they're always happy. Yet, they don't have all the fancy things that we have. Very simple people living simple lives. They're not running, We are killing ourselves to, go to the nightclubs or go to the moon, go to the Mars. We can't be happy unless we get to Mars. They don't care about Mars. They're quite happy in Berg Street. They're always happy. They're singing and dancing on the streets in colourful clothes. Everyone else is walking around in different shades of grey. If you look through the street generally, I don't know if they do it on purpose. It appears that their clothing seems to match the bitumen road and the footpath and the cement walls. Do they do that on purpose? So here are these. I remember the first time I ever saw Hare Krishna food. I was at a concert, and I said to my brother, it was at the My Music concert, My Music Bowl. There was AC/DC, and they were just beginning, and Daddy Cool and different groups. Anyway, the Hare Krishnas come on sort of at an interval, started chanting and then passing out. They had some passing out plates of food. I said to my brother, who are these people? Oh, don't worry about that. He said, but they're giving out food. He says, I'm going to go up and get one. So he went up with his friend, he brought it back. So they put down this plate of food. And I looked at it. I'd never seen so many colours on a plate. That's the thing that shocked me. There's something yellow. It's like bright yellow rice. There's something that's red and, there's green. There's all these colours. The food is colourful. The dresses are colourful. So people can't help but know that these people are just bright and happy and full of life. The food is full of life. So it was so colourful and so different. I mean, I recognised rice and things. I thought it was very inventive. Instead of having a whole pack of chips, they just got one big chip on top. I thought it was a big potato chip. I thought it was a poppadom. I thought, these people, they're crazy. That's what I thought. And they'll probably try and kill everyone in this audience. That's what I was thinking. So what I did, I thought, but again, out of respect, they're just trying to give out some food. If they're not crazy people, it'd be disrespectful for me to not eat some of the food. So what I did was I took a little piece of the poppadom, just in case there were actually something to them, and I put it in my mouth and I put the rest aside. So I had some prasadam. That one piece of prasadam, that tiny little bit of papadum, that's probably why I'm here now. So potent. But that is the Brahma conception. So Rahugana, he had that Brahma conception. So what Prabhupada says is when that's there, then people think, well, let me hear from them. Then they take up that process of pure devotional service, beginning with hearing. And when they hear from devotees, then they can gradually understand Bhagavad Gita properly, because, as mentioned in those verses that Prabhupada quotes, that Bhagavad Gita comes down in a chain of disciplic succession. And the persons who receive, such kings as Arjuna, he was one of the kings who received, when Krishna saw that the science of Bhagavad Gita was lost, he wanted to again begin the real teachings of the Gita, that if one can always think of the absolute truth, one's mind is always absorbed in the absolute reality, one will attain that absolute reality, rather than one's mind is always absorbed in the illusory miseries, which we call enjoyment, material enjoyment. Rather than have our minds absorbed in that, we absorb our mind in the absolute truth. That is a teaching. And to revive the individual soul's eternal relationship, which is already there, with the absolute truth. It's forgotten. So if one has already in that relationship, we should hear from that person. So Arjuna's qualification to understand and to distribute Bhagavad Gita was because he was a devotee in direct relationship with the absolute truth, Lord Sri Krishna. And therefore he was qualified. So for us to understand Bhagavad Gita, we must hear from such a person, and we should also practice devotional service. And if we, as it says in that verse, 1854 and 55, that if we take to devotional service, it says, one can understand me as I am, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by devotional service, and when one is in full consciousness of me by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. So it's a very serious message, the Bhagavad Gita, very serious. But that doesn't mean as devotees, that when people associate with us, that we've got this very serious expression on our faces. And, the people ask us, what's your teaching? Well, we're certainly not going to be hogs, dogs, camels and asses like the rest of the world and all their demoniac leaders. Devotees they're very serious, who have forgotten the purpose of life. It's not sense gratification, that's illusion. You should be trying to solve the process of birth and death, and you should be thinking how to get out of this world and go back to the spiritual world. Otherwise, you're not even a human being. I'm just repeating what I said to someone yesterday. No. But devotees are they have that seriousness in mind, but that's not how they present. They're dealing with little children and, little old ladies and, someone's just come out of the office. And devotees are very friendly and light. The message is heavy, but it's presented in the mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. A little prasadam, some dancing, some nice kirtan, some nice association, some friendliness, like that. It's presented in a way that is, Krishna himself, he's so merciful, although he's God, he personally comes amongst us and he spoke Bhagavad Gita. So kind. like that. So following the footsteps of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, following the footsteps of Krishna, devotees are very, very kind and gentle in the presentation. We should never forget the seriousness that everything we do, every time we speak something, every time we're eating something, every action we perform from the time we wake to the time we go to sleep, our seriousness is like that. If this is not, something that's connected with me getting, out of material existence in this life, not next life, then I have no interest in it. That's what Prabhupada calls serious. Prabhupada would often say, and the Gita says the same thing, there's no qualification. We shouldn't judge people that anyone in the world, any human being in the world, is qualified or not disqualified from taking up the teachings and understanding the teachings of Bhagavad Gita if they're serious and sincere and they hear it from a devotee. They don't need to be, great kings. They don't need to be highly intelligent. If they approach a devotee and they're serious, I've been thinking about this temporary life of mine and has no real value. Is there, is that it? Is there something more to me? Is there something permanent? And if so, how do I get there? And how did I get in this position? Like if people have that and they hear Gita in a submissive way, as it's spoken, that the Bhagavad Gita is presented, and we hear the Gita, it's like taking a medicine. If one is serious about taking medicine, you take it exactly as you see it on the label or as a physician prescribed. So the physician says, take 1 1/4 or 1 1/2 of these tablets once in the morning before you eat, and then once in the evening before you eat. That's it. Don't take any more and don't miss a day, like that. And then take this one in the middle of the day, like that. So if you take your medicine exactly like that, not like a friend comes up and says, just have the 3 in the morning, because you probably forget in the evening. Just have the whole lot in the morning, or if you forget it then, or if you miss a day, just a couple of days, just whack them all down, on the 3rd day. It's not like that. So serious also means to take the Bhagavad Gita as it's prescribed in the Gita itself, and that is, at least theoretically, accept that Krishna is the personality of Godhead. That would be serious, because all the Acharyas of India accept Bhagavad Gita as spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna himself says that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Bhagavad Gita, which he spoke, says that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And all the Vedas, which are written by Vyasadeva, say that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So one would have to be very insincere to just discount all of that and just say, that's okay, I've got my own opinion. So if someone says that to the doctor says do that, and he comes back, he's half dead, 2 weeks later. What happened? Oh, I had my own way of doing things and it didn't work out. So anyway, if one is sincere and serious, hears and chants in the association, takes some prasad, then gradually one can. I'll just read this one last quote, and this is from Śrīmad about the glories of the Gita. You've got these verses, Gita Mahatmya, these are Śrīmad verses. He says, Gita Mahatmya 1, Bhagavad Gita is a transcendental literature which one should read very carefully. Gita Shastramidam Punya Ya Patet Yata Pumam. If one properly follows the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, one can be freed from all the miseries and anxieties of life. Vayasa Kadi Varjita. One will be free from all fears in this life and one's next life will be spiritual. Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Any questions or comments?